Man, oh man. Okay, so we are technically at that point where this is Jean Grey finding out a lot of big things about Charles Xavier, but also kind of like this is the starting point for me personally when it came to Marvel kind of changing the whole idea of who is Charles Xavier. And the reason why I'm saying that because, okay, when it came to Charles Xavier in the early days of Marvel Comics, he was always kind of painted as this great man, this father figure for a lot of characters in Marvel Comics. For me personally, this was the starting point where you have Marvel say, actually, for Charles Xavier, the dude is holding a lot of dark secrets. Those dark secrets will slowly come out over the next few years in Marvel Comics. And really, those dark secrets are truly messed up when it comes to Jean Grey and Cyclops and a few other characters down the road. And really, as we get into the opening pages for issue number 53, we're really picking up with Jean Grey. Now, this is Jean Grey just out there shopping, having a good old time. But the problem is for Jean Grey is that with her being a psychic, she can read the minds of people around her. So like, for example, the first guy she goes to, she asks for directions. This guy has some nasty thoughts about her. The next person is the lady in charge of the store she goes to, who's very jealous of Jean Grey's size. And the last one is some girl who recognized Jean Grey and knows that she comes from Charles Xavier School, basically knowing that she is a mutant. And so for Jean Grey, she's trying her best to block out their thoughts, but of course it still somewhat bothers her. Now, when she does go into the dressing room, that is when she is confronted by the man himself, Onslaught. Now, this is Onslaught pulling Jean Grey into the astral plane. The astral plane is only reachable by someone who is a psychic. And sometimes you have other people being able to access the astral plane as long as they're with someone, again, who has the ability to access the astral plane. But here's the thing, because for Onslaught, the reason why he's here right now with Jean Grey is for two reasons. One, he believes that Jean Grey will play a very important role for the days to come down the road when it comes to mutants and humans, but also is him trying to challenge Jean Grey's beliefs, because for Jean Grey's beliefs, it's the same thing like the rest of the X-Men, but also for Charles Xavier. You have the X-Men trying to reach Charles Xavier's goal, where mutants and humans have the ability to live together in harmony. But right now, it's Onslaught saying like, do you truly believe that could possibly happen? Do you truly believe that Charles Xavier's dream is actually reachable? And so this is him trying to challenge her, hoping to change her mind, but to also bring her over to his side. Now, this leads us over to Beast, R. Hank McCoy. And the reason why I say R. Hank McCoy, because currently he's locked up. And the reason why, because, well, a different Hank McCoy, better known as Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse reality. Now, for Dark Beast, he locked away R. Hank McCoy so that he could pretend to be R. Hank McCoy and pretend to be with the X-Men, but also to hide from Mr. Sinister, because in the old reality for Dark Beast, Mr. Sinister was a scary man to Dark Beast, but he's also afraid of the possibility that this reality's version of Mr. Sinister could discover his old reality, the Age of Apocalypse. So his whole idea is to hide with the X-Men right now, pretending to be R. Hank McCoy. But right now, it's R. Hank McCoy finding a way out of his prison to hopefully regain his spot on the X-Men. Now, I want to switch over to Jean Grey and Onslaught, because remember, he's trying to challenge Jean Grey's belief. And the way he's doing that right now is showing her Graydon Creed. Now, for Graydon Creed, we already know he is the son to Mystique and also Sabretooth. But on top of that, he's also right now trying to run for president on the whole campaign built on the idea of hatred towards the mutant race, because there's people across the world who do hate mutants. Now, for Jean Grey, she's kind of like, okay, so whatever, because like, yes, I know there are folks out there who hate us, but at the same time, we still have the possibility to change their minds or at least try to ignore them and continue on with our lives. Like, their hatred is technically a normal thing, but it's also Onslaught trying to show her, like, yes, you do have people out there who love mutants, people out there who hate mutants. You also have people who just want to use mutants in a bad way to reach their own personal goal. And matter of fact, you have Onslaught show that Graydon Creed's assistant is right now just trying to show how great he is as a campaign manager. And so it's Onslaught saying, like, there's folks out there who don't even truly hate mutants, but at the same time, they'll still go out of their way to use mutants to reach their own personal goals. But now we have to transition over to Psylocke and also Archangel. Now, in an earlier video, you had these two characters get attacked by some shadow figure. Now, unfortunately, we were not told who that figure was. Now, here's the thing, because for Archangel, he tried his best to move Psylocke far away from that shadow figure. And matter of fact, there's more of them. But the problem is, they just keep following our heroes. Now, for Archangel and Psylocke, they're now seeing the shadow figures coming together. And when they do, bam, you have the Juggernaut appear out of the shadows. Now, this is a man who's truly scared. This is a man who's asking for help. He's kind of like, listen, I got to tell you guys right now, I know something very important. This is very, very important. But the problem is, he can't tell them. It's kind of like something is going on in his mind that's blocking him from allowing him to tell this big secret. And so, of course, it makes him freak out and go on a small rampage. But he does realize there's one person who could basically help him, who could dive into his mind to pull out that secret. And that'll be his stepbrother. Of course, talking about Charles Xavier. Now, I kind of want to go ahead and transition back over to Jean Grey and Onslaught. Here's the reason why, because you do have the two characters go into the mind of Charles Xavier. Now, for Onslaught, it's really him trying to show, like, okay, Jean Grey, you believe that this man right here is a saint, that this man right here is a great father figure, like, he can do no wrong. Well, you know what? Let me go ahead and show you this dark secret of his. Now, this was a huge turning point when it came to fans of X-Men comics, especially for Charles Xavier. And the reason why, because again, for Jean Grey, she looks at Charles as a father figure. But you then basically had Onslaught show this moment where it was Charles Xavier hiding the fact that he didn't look at Jean Grey as a daughter. He looked at Jean Grey as somebody he wanted to be with. He loved her. And so for Jean Grey, that right there shatters the whole idea of her looking at him as a saint, looking at him as a father figure. And that is what Onslaught wanted to show Jean Grey in the mind of Charles Xavier. Now, this kind of leads us over to, well, what seems to be Magneto. And the reason why I say what it seems to be, because this storyline gets very big after when it comes to Onslaught. But here's the thing. When it comes to this character right now, we're kind of left to believe it's our Magneto. And when it comes to this guy, let's not forget, when it came to Fatal Attractions, you had Charles Xavier shut down the mind of Magneto. But then later on, we found Magneto just walking around the world trying his best to figure out who he is, where he came from. And so this storyline does continue on in X-Men Unlimited issue number 11. The problem is that that issue has not gone digital yet at all. And so unfortunately for me, I am unable to cover that book at the time being. And this kind of leads us into the ending for the first chapter, because you do have Jean Grey, really more Onslaught at first in this conversation, trying to bring Jean Grey over to his side, which of course for Jean Grey is a huge no. Now for Jean Grey, it's her believing that maybe, just maybe, she has a chance to battle against him, to at least stop the man, because right now she's full of rage. But it's him saying like, no, you can't stop me. I am a powerful God, an angry God. I'm going to tell you right now, you need to know my name. And so he sends her back into reality, except when she looks in the mirror, only she can see this. But when she looks into the mirror, branded on her forehead saying Onslaught, which means we're getting closer and closer to the big event. But now we have to transition over to Uncanny X-Men issue number 334. Now, when we do, we're picking up with the Juggernaut. Now, this is him just heading over to the school of Charles Xavier. Now, usually when it comes to the Juggernaut, he would just attack a place without any questions at all. Just go on a complete rampage. But this is a man going here kind of like, I need the help of my stepbrother. He's the only person who could basically help me figure out the dark secret about Onslaught that's currently in my head right now. But unfortunately, I cannot get it out of my head to figure out what is that dark secret. Now, for the Juggernaut, as he walks around the lake or the water nearby the mansion, he does find a camera. And of course, that camera is going to warn the X-Men that he's currently on their grounds. So sooner or later, he should meet up with a few members of the X-Men. And technically, he is right, because when we jump over to Bishop and Gambit, it's the two characters right now just trying to fix Cerebro. Now, let's not forget, for Bishop and Gambit, they're still trying to build some kind of bond with one another. And the reason why, because for Bishop, he does not trust Gambit at all. Because for Bishop, from his future, he knows that the X-Men were betrayed by somebody in their own group. But on top of that, the last surviving member is Gambit in his future. Now, while you do have the two guys talking to one another, that is when they are alerted that something is happening on the grounds. And of course, that would be Juggernaut. Now, this is where we see Jean Grey going over to Cyclops to tell Cyclops what happened to her, how she basically met Onslaught. Now, it's also her telling him like, hey, listen, he wanted me on his side. He wanted me to join him. Now, for Cyclops, he wants the meaning behind that part right there. Like, what did he mean he wants you to join him? Now, the problem is that she is slowly forgetting the entire conversation. Now, for Cyclops, he wants her to go talk to Charles Xavier, but she's kind of like, no, not right now. Like, I will take care of that in the morning. I just need a little bit of time. Now, for Archangel and also Psylocke, they have been trying to get a hold of the X-Men. Now, for Psylocke, she kind of feels like the reason why she has been unable to get a hold of Charles Xavier by using her psychic abilities is because of, well, the Crimson Dawn inside of her. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain what the Crimson Dawn is. Matter of fact, later on in our coverage over the X-Men, we're going to fully explore the whole idea of the Crimson Dawn. But it's Archangel saying like, hey, listen, I still have not been able to get a hold of the X-Men with technology either. So for our two characters right now, they're beginning to freak out. Now we jump over to Cannonball, and this is Cannonball going to Charles Xavier. Now for Cannonball, he kind of feels bad about what happened to Wolverine. As we all know, when it came to Wolverine series leading into the 100 issue, you had Tyler Dayspring, the son of Cable, try to use Wolverine as one of his horsemen, because to Tyler, he was trying to become the next Apocalypse. Now Cannonball was there, and he kind of feels like he is somewhat responsible for the idea that Wolverine has gone full savage, because when it came to Tyler Dayspring, he tried to bond adamantium onto the bones of Wolverine, because by this point Magneto had ripped off the adamantium off the bones of Wolverine. Now, when it came to Wolverine, he had the ability to reject the adamantium process. The problem was that when he did that, he also got rid of the last piece of his humanity. So unfortunately, he went full savage. And so for Cannonball, he kind of feels like he has the ability to, actually helped out back then to hopefully save Wolverine from turning full savage. Now, this is Cannonball going over to Charles Xavier, kind of asking for some help, because for Cannonball, he wants to leave the X-Men, and he's hoping that Charles will give him some kind of pep talk. But the problem is Charles just talking down to this man, basically breaking him down, making it seem like he is a worthless character. And this is out of character for Charles Xavier. where of course you have Cannonball being somewhat concerned for Charles now. And so now we're able to switch over to Gambit and Bishop. Now these two characters, they're heading over to where the alarm had went off at. Now the entire time that they made their way over there, for Gambit, Homeboy was trying to have a conversation with Bishop, trying to slowly build up that friendship. But here's the thing, because when they do arrive where the alarm had went off at, they get ambushed by Juggernaut. And just like that, these two characters are easily taken out. Now you do have the book kind of reminding us about two different things that I had already mentioned in this video. The first being that Dark Beast pretending to be our Beast on the X-Men, and so far no one truly knows that that's Dark Beast. But also on top of that, you also have the book remind us that Wolverine has now gone full savage. Either way, by the end of this section, because you do have Dark Beast right now trying to run some tests on Wolverine, you have Cannonball stop by. And the reason why, because he wants to have a one-on-one conversation with Storm about what just happened with Charles Xavier. But for a brief moment, we have to jump over to, well, Graydon Creed. Now here's the thing, because this was Marvel back then already planning the next X-Men crossover, because you have Graydon Creed be confronted by Bastion. Now this is Bastion saying, "You're stupid, Graydon. Like, my plans are slowly coming together, but the whole idea of you attacking Kelly was ridiculous." Now, that attack happened in the earlier part of our coverage, or the prologues for X-Men Onslaught, where you had Kelly call up Scott Summers to warn Scott what was coming down the road for the mutant race. Now, for Jean Grey, she does find Gambit and Bishop knocked out, and she is a tad bit concerned about what happened to them. But that is when she is confronted by Juggernaut. Now, for Jean Grey, Juggernaut is an enemy, but she kind of realized that he's not here to attack her. He's not here to attack anybody at all. He is here to get some help. Now, at first, she's kind of concerned about what he is planning, or why he's actually here. Like, yes, he did tell her, hey, I'm here to get some help. But for Jean Grey, this is the Juggernaut. They have fought many times over the years. But you have him go ahead and take off his helmet to show, like, listen, I'm going to trust you, and now you have to trust me. I'm allowing you to enter my mind, because that right there is the reason why I'm here, because I have a secret I can't pull out when it comes to Onslaught. Now, as we transition over to Charles Xavier, is Charles Xavier right now just looking up information about Nate Gray? Now, technically, that is important for the overall story, but for right now, you have Cyclops walk into the room. Now, just like Cannonball, you also have Charles Xavier begin to talk down to, well, Cyclops. And you're kind of like, okay, what in the world is going on with Charles Xavier? Now, for a brief moment, while you do have Charles just talk down to Scott Summers, he said, Scott, I need you, Scott, to be strong. And then out of nowhere, you have Charles disappear. Now, you didn't have Cyclops ask the computer, like, okay, computer, locate Charles Xavier. The computer says Charles is currently in his study. Now, here's the thing, because you didn't have Charles contact Cyclops saying, relax, Cyclops. Consider this as a test from a former instructor to his favorite student. As always, Scott, be prepared for anything. So for Scott Summers, he does somewhat relax. But now we jump over to Jean Grey and also Juggernaut as they head underneath the mansion. The reason why, because there is this chamber that Charles used way back in the early days of X-Men comics, where basically is a size-shielded chamber. It should be very secure to allow Jean Grey to go into the mind of Juggernaut to hopefully pull out the answer out of his mind to figure out who is Onslaught. But on top of that, make sure that Onslaught will not be able to kind of pick up what's happening here. Really, almost any psychic should not be able to pick up what's happening here inside this chamber. And so this leads us into the final chapter of today's video, because we do pick up with Cannonball being spotted by Cyclops. Now, this is Cyclops kind of realized that Cannonball just got lectured, or what he believes got lectured by Charles Xavier, not really knowing that Charles kind of broke the man down. Now, before you have the two characters being able to continue on with their conversation, you have the rest of the X-Men, minus Jean Grey, running over to Cyclops saying like, hey, listen, Gambit and Bishop just had a run-in with Juggernaut. He's somewhere nearby, so let's go. And so you have the X-Men go ahead and begin to look around for Juggernaut. And for right now, no one's really realized that Juggernaut is with Jean Grey, because no one realized that Jean Grey is currently missing. Now, for Jean Grey, as she tries her best to look into the mind of Juggernaut, you have Jean Grey realize two things. That one is Juggernaut right now trying to get to Jean Grey, because what he's saying is somewhat very similar to Onslaught. The whole idea that Charles Xavier is not a saint at all. The man is kind of messed up. Now, with all that being said, you have Jean Grey realize that Juggernaut did not close the door behind him. So the chamber is not secure like it's supposed to be. And so for Cyclops, back at the mansion, he kind of realized he can no longer feel Jean Grey, and that freaks him out. So he says, hey guys, you know what? The rest of you guys go ahead and continue on to look for Jean Grey. I'll be right back. So he runs back towards the mansion. Now, for Iceman, he does bring up the fact that this kind of reminds them, or him, sorry, the first time the X-Men ran into Juggernaut. Now, he does ask Beast, do you remember that moment? Here's the problem though. For Beast, this is Dark Beast. He does not remember that moment at all. And so he tries his best to play the game acting like he does remember. But for Bobby, he's kind of like, what you just said is completely wrong. And so it's kind of like another hint for the X-Men. There's something going on with Beast here. And really, speaking of our Beast, Hank McCoy, we see him being able to finally break free. And when it does seem like he'll finally be able to go home, he's then confronted by somebody who calls him Furball. And the problem is, we have no idea who that person is. Now, for Cyclops, he runs over to Charles Xavier. Now, for Charles, he's still acting, mostly rude here. But it's also Scott saying like, hey, listen, Jean Grey is missing. Now, for Charles, he's not really worried at first. But you have Scott say, no, we should be worried, because she did have a conversation with Onslaught. Now that right there scares Charles Xavier. You then have Scott realize that for some reason Charles is looking up information about Franklin Richards, the son to Reed and Susan Richards over at the Fantastic Four. Now for Charles, he does not remember looking anything up about Franklin. So to him, that is right there very odd. Now you also have Cyclops tell Charles about the Juggernaut. Now for Charles, he tells Cyclops, hey, go ahead and turn off all our defenses. I want to lure Juggernaut in because I believe my X-Men should be able to handle him. But for Jean Grey, you do have her and Juggernaut continue to try to work together, even though the man does kind of tick her off. But it's her right now trying to help him to unblock that one thing he knows about Onslaught in his mind, trying to break it away. And this leads into the big moment, because you then had the story jump back over to Charles. And for Charles, he has been feeling like a failure the last few years when it comes to X-Men comics, from 1991 up to now. The whole idea of Sabretooth, he tried to fix the mind of that mutant. He failed. He failed Wolverine as well. Psylocke almost got killed. Magneto and Fatal Attractions, where you have Magneto go too far. You also now have Graydon Creed out there basically just trying to become president to get rid of the mutant race. You now have mutants across the world being attacked, and most likely those humans who do attack mutants will get off easily. It's Charles Xavier feeling defeated. It's Charles Xavier getting angry. The rage is building up more and more, but then he realized that somebody else right now is in the room. and he realized who that person is. Right when you have Charles realize what's going on, Jean Grey also realizes as well. She tells Juggernaut, hey, you gotta get out of here now. Like, you're in danger. Get the mess out of here. The problem is that when he runs out the chamber, well, the mind games begin right now. Onslaught is playing with Juggernaut's mind. Unfortunately, he can't escape. Now, there is a point where he does run into Charles Xavier's study. And this leads into the moment where you have Juggernaut be confronted by Onslaught. Now, for Kane, he's begging Onslaught to not kill him, to let him go. And for Onslaught, he loves the idea of killing off Juggernaut. He's kind of like, that is a splendid idea. You know what? Let's go ahead and do that. But here's the thing, because you didn't have Onslaught pull out the gem of Sidorak, which of course gives King Marco his abilities. Without the gem, he's no longer the Juggernaut. So just like that, he is weakened. But the very last page reveals to us who is Onslaught. It is Charles Xavier. And then to close on this video, you have Charles call the X-Men over to him. And this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.